to another episode of Under the Liberty Tree. Today, as always, we do very much and ask if you wouldn't mind subscribing to Under the Liberty Tree. We are also working on a Substack, which is a publication online that will allow you to subscribe and
I
get
know that's been so good, and you've been writing some really good stuff.
getting email notifications of when we write, and we're also going to look for ways to promote the show through that. And of course, we would love it if you would share it. We have been shadow banned, so it's you sharing this that allows us to get it out. And I also want to say just the main reason we're doing this broadcast, the main reason we've come back to it is the world is so out of kilter. And we feel like both on right-wing media and left-wing media, our views are not always represented. And so we just sort of think it's important to say what we think, just so that we're not out of practice.
Yeah.
Because, well,
Yes,
it's the theme of
it's
today's
true.
episode, which is that forced speech, forced compliance is the future. And we have got to get in the habit of training ourselves to speak. And this is our way. We feel like what we would love to see is if everybody would have a conversation about what you believe and put it out there and talk about it, because we the people are supposed to be the rulers. And what's become quite evident is that the time for passivity, the time for just sitting back and saying, well, it's none of my business, is over, because they're not going to let you. Now, you've got an article that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. Last week, there were a ruling came down against two Springfield, Illinois teachers. I'm just going to get their names here. Brooke Henderson and Jennifer Lumley. They were issued to pay almost $313,000 in lawyers' fees, court fees, for the audacity of taking their school district, their teachers, and they had the audacity to sue their school district.
Why were they suing their school
Well, let's
district?
just read. I think PJ Media does a great job of surmising what went on.
Okay, well,
they did a great summation.
Then we're gonna read the surmising. You will be made to care, or you will be made to pay, your choice. Back in the 70s and 80s, one of the things I repeatedly heard from the pro-abortion crowd was, you can't legislate morality. Oh my goodness. I have heard this phrase so many times. And of course, the idea is completely absurd.
Millions and millions of times.
Well, it's completely absurd, because all legislation is rooted in morality.
All of it.
If you say you can't steal, on what basis are you saying that? And it might be a popular morality.
And we need to clarify, it's based on someone's morality.
Right.
So often when we hear that based on morality, we think, oh, Bible. No,
right.
It's based on someone's morality. And just because you may not believe in the Bible, but you still have a morality.
Somebody's ideas, somebody's moral code has to be informed.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we've decided to do Under the Liberty Tree is that we firmly believe that a Christian's moral code is no less valuable or less important than a secularist's. So the secularists can draw their moral code from whatever their thing is, and in our representative republic, they can participate in the system and try to advance it.
Yeah.
But Christians, whether they're quote unquote nationalist or otherwise, are in no way second class. And that's kind of what this article is about.
Yeah.
But here, go back to this PJ Media article. If you have been paying attention for the last decade or so, you know that morality can be legislated, and for that matter, enforced, provided, of course, it's the right brand of morality. Two Springfield, Missouri teachers have discovered that enforcement can come with a massive price. Just the News reports that Brooke Henderson and Jennifer Lumley have been hit with a judgment of $313,000 in legal fees because they filed a lawsuit over critical race theory. A press release from the Southeastern Legal Foundation said that Henderson and Lumley filed their suit in August of 2021, alleging that anti-racism training in their district compelled their speech and discriminated against them because of their views that Americans should be colorblind. In other words, they took the position, these two teachers took the position, the controversial position that we should be judged on the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And they said that the training got in the way of that. The challenged training, was textbook anti-racism. This is what is now being described as anti-racism in our culture. In fact, Ms. Henderson and Ms. Lumley were told they needed to commit to anti-racism, which had a proactive element to advocate for political and social change. The training further taught, now these are teachers and they are being trained how to be an anti-racist, taught that colorblindness.
But more than that, what's not being said here, they are being taught what and how to teach the children. They're being taught anti-racist theology. It really is a theology.
It's an ideology, right? It's a belief system.
But they're being taught this so that they teach the correct thing.
Morality.
They're being taught what they're supposed to now teach, and we would say correctly indoctrinate the children. This is indoctrination.
And by the way, all education is indoctrination. This is why the whole statement of you can't legislate morality it's such a silly non-thing to say. Because of course you have to pick something. If you are going to say this is good, then you have to say this is the contrast. And it doesn't matter what the subject is. There are things that are good and things that are evil. Anyway, the challenge, the training that they were being given taught that colorblindness and, quote, white silence were tools of white supremacy, that white people were privileged, and that equality was harmful. The training session began with instructions to, quote, stay engaged, quote, speak your truth, and acknowledge your privileges. Of course, you can only speak your truth if it's their truth.
But see, the sentence before that is the rock and the hard place that they put conservatives between, because you either, whatever you say, whatever your statements are that you say out loud, will be perceived as white privilege, and whatever you don't come out and say, your silence is also white privilege. So there's very little wiggle room in there in which to actually live.
It's a very rigid ideology. It featured a slideshow and a series of videos, including the death of George Floyd and cartoons about systemic racism and, quote, understanding white supremacy, that asserted that our nation was founded on white supremacy. They were told systems of oppression were woven into the very foundation of America, and that white supremacy is a highly descriptive term for the culture we live in. Now, of course, we know from previous stories that when conservatives point this kind of thing out and they say, oh, critical race theory is being taught in schools, they're immediately told, oh, no, it's not. And then they're challenged, well, you can't define it. And then when they do define it, then they're being told, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. So
and that's the progression. Yeah. It's always that same progression.
Right.
It doesn't exist. You're just making this up. You're just creating a moral panic. And then right after that, you can't define it. So you don't even know what you're talking about. And then when you do clearly define it, oh, yep, it's a good thing. We should be doing.
Right. And so why are these seminars necessary? Because, these seminars are being put on by the school districts, aka the National Education Association, the American Teachers Foundation. Why do they have to do these? Because they already know they're getting the teachers in college, the teachers who are learning to become teachers, whether it's teachers college or whatever college they're going to. But they have to now capture the teachers who are like me, older, who actually learned that we started teaching when it was okay to teach, American history was correct.
Right.
And that we all knew we were supposed to be colorblind. Back in the 80s and 90s,
right.
We were supposed
to end racism, we were to be colorblind.
And so now they have to catch all the older teachers and make sure they comply.
So the press release from this Southeastern Legal Foundation has links, and we will include this in the broadcast in the comments below or the description below. The press release has links to the training material. The training itself culminated with, quote, an anti-racist solo rite during which participants read anti-racist statements and write what they would do to become anti-racist. The author of this article from uh, PJ Media says Chairman Mao would be so proud to know that the traditions he started are being upheld. Henderson and Lumley, the two teachers, were warned that if they did not participate in the struggle session, they would be called upon to do so. So when they did speak, it was to express their opposition to the district training. Oh no, you
Mm.
don't go into catechism class and
Mm.
then challenge the priest.
Mm.
The press release said they were corrected and that they, quote, self-censored. When Henderson and Lumley's lawsuit came before federal district judge Douglas Harpool, he ignored the evidence, called the case frivolous, ruled against the teachers, and also ruled that they owed the school district $313,000 in legal fees. Now, the there's SLF, this organization that is helping them with this lawsuit, is going to be appealing, and they are assisting them. Just the News notes that the general counsel, Kimberly Herman, called Harpool. That would be from this SLF Liberty. Called Harpool, longtime Democrat elected official in Missouri, appointed to the bench by Obama, a lone, agenda-driven federal judge determined to deny concerned teachers and parents the right to seek redress in court. And there's the tweet. But Herman added that Ms. Henderson and Ms. Lumley are educators who are being punished by a federal judge for courageously stepping forward to file one of the nation's first civil rights lawsuits tackling anti-racism training that requires educators to pledge allegiance to radical unconstitutional views on race and politics. If this ruling stands, teachers and parents will have no check against unlimited government power to violate free speech and equal protection rights, and you'll be punished if you attempt to do so in court. So this is very interesting to me. I didn't know this was going to be what we were talking about with this segment, but I don't know if I ever told you the story. Back when I was in practice, there was a business group that would meet on a regular basis at various places,
Mhm.
and we would bring in speakers.
Mhm.
And I was right across the street from then College Misericordia. I think it was before it became a
Mm.
university, and went over there for a business luncheon.
Yeah, I remember
And
when you were going to those.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the speaker was one of the faculty members. Now, this was a very long time ago. This might have been 20 years ago.
Yeah, those were a long time ago.
And the speaker was a professor.
A nun or
Well, I don't think so, because the speaker was talking about
because it's a college or a quick Catholic
unconscious,
college.
I know,
Mm.
but the speaker was talking about unconscious racism.
Oh, wow, all the way back then?
Yeah,
That
I
was
never told you
that was
this.
a long time. Well, if you did, I mean,
So
um,
I went into the session, didn't know what it was going to be about. Usually it was like an insurance guy. I got up and talked about chiropractic one time. You know,
mm,
it's a business
yeah.
group. And she was talking about how hard it is to be a Jewish professor at a Catholic college, because
Well, she wasn't a nun then.
that's why I said I don't think she was a
No.
nun. But she said, you know, she'd be walking across the campus around the holidays, and students at this Catholic college would wish her a Merry Christmas. And they didn't realize how offensive that was to her as a Jewish person who didn't believe in Jesus, and how hurtful that was, and how we all need to get better at detecting. I didn't tell you this.
Well, if you did, honey, that was a
This
long
is like
time ago.
20
How
years
would
ago. Well,
I don't remember
and
what I
you were
ate for breakfast.
you were having absence seizures, so it's entirely possible that was before God healed you. That you may not have remembered. And so then they did this exercise kind of thing, just like that
Mm.
story was talking about, where you had to go and you had to tell something about a time when you had expressed unconscious racism. And people were quite, you know, I mean, this was supposed to be a business meeting, but
Yeah.
people felt awkward about it, but they felt peer pressure to do or say something. And so
What did you do?
I'm
What did you do?
I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about my witness as a
Mm.
Christian, and I want to be wise as serpent and gentle as dove. And I'm thinking, what?
Mm.
What am I going to say? Because this is crazy. This is seeking an offense. This was back before trigger was even a word, but obviously
Mm.
she was being triggered. And I was thinking about it, and then it hit me. So when it came my turn, I said, I really appreciated this lecture because it made me realize that I have been the victim of unconscious bias because I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And oftentimes in casual conversation, people will take the Lord's name in vain.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And for me,
Yeah.
when someone takes Jesus' name and
Mm.
uses it
Yeah.
casually,
Yeah.
that's for me just as important and vital to my self-identity as if someone were to curse out my own mother.
Yeah.
And so I
Mm.
didn't realize I have been all of my life a
Mm.
victim of this unconscious bias
That's-
against what I hold
Yeah.
dear. And so I guess I'm
Mm.
I guess I'm free now
Yeah.
when someone takes the Lord's name in vain to tell them, "Hey, you're expressing something that hurts my feelings. You don't know it, how deeply offensive and horrible you are,
Mm.
but you need to stop that. You need to be sensitive to what bothers me." And I was the last person to speak. I wasn't supposed to be the last
Supposed
person
to.
to speak,
Mm.
but it was like, oh,
Oh,
look
look
at
at
the
the
time.
time.
We have to go now. And it was so funny because it just shut the whole
Mm.
thing down. And when we got in the elevator, and I didn't even know any of the people I was in the
Mm.
elevator with when I was leaving, but as we got in the elevator, several people looked at me, like looked around, and they were like, I'm really glad you did that because that was really weird. I'm really glad you said that. But this
Oh.
is this
Mm.
is the point of
Yes.
this
Mm-hmm.
segment that we're doing today, which is that you will be made to care. The time
Mm-hmm.
for kind of holding
Yeah.
back and not saying anything is over.
Yeah.
That if there is going to be persistent free speech in
Mm.
America, it's going to be because people like you, people like you, people like me no longer just sit quietly by, but
Yeah.
instead
Mm-hmm.
say something. The SLF further asserts that the judge's ruling was motivated by something more than pure partisanship. Harpool, that is the judge, awarded the damages as a deterrent to people who might be inclined to speak out against CRT in the future. And we've certainly seen this in a
Oh
number
yeah.
of different
Oh yeah.
cases. It seems like a fair assessment. If someone has an objection to CRT, not only will they lose, but they will incur stiff legal fees to boot. And this is why we started Under the Liberty Tree, because we cannot be silent anymore and comply or admit to being racist.
Yeah.
And we have to speak out because it is our courage to
Yeah.
speak out that when everyone else sees that, just like in the situation where I was in that elevator, then people realize, oh yeah, this is just craziness, and we don't have to
Yeah.
we don't have to go along with it for the sake of being polite or winsome or kind, because it's insanity.
Yep.
It is
Mm-hmm.
divisive, it's damaging, it's hurtful, it's racist. It's racist. Anti-racism, as it's being
Yeah.
promulgated by these courses, is racist. And that's why I'm really excited about what our governor has done here in Florida, Governor
Yeah.
DeSantis,
Yeah.
and what apparently other governors are also following the lead on, which is to outlaw this stuff. And that's the thing. You're going to
Has
have
to
to
be done.
legislate.
Has to.
We're
Yeah.
going to have to legislate morality as
Mm.
much as we might be inclined to just say, well, live and let live. That's not the way this works.
Nope.
Someone has to set the rules. And the rules can be
Mm.
generous. Traditionally, Christians
Mm.
have been fairly generous, even though they have a reputation for not being so. They've been fairly
Mm.
generous. I mean, America was founded on
Read the
Christian
history of William
principles.
Penn and the foundation of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah, the state that we fled because, in
Huh.
part, because
Yeah.
of the way it was taken over. So we appreciate you joining. We of course
Yeah.
ask you
Mhm.
again to subscribe and like to
Mhm.
Under the Liberty Tree, and especially on Rumble, because we are looking to get to 25 subscribers so that we can live broadcast there going forward. But thanks for joining us. Did you have anything else to say?
No, I think that was a perfect
All right.
summation, summarizing.
Thanks for summarizing us under the Liberty Tree. We'll see you.